as I moved into the 2019 season, I looked in the garage and tried to figure out what it was I was going to move around and do. I found a good deal on an R3, so I was able to have a backup, and I thought that might be kind of nice if I was racing my other R3 to have a backup sitting there I could get parts off of if I needed to. And the next move was a pretty big one. I sold the shifter cart, and then I sold my 300 Ninja, and I replaced took the funds of that and bought a really nice R6, a 2016 R6, and then I got a 2018 Grom for a pit bike, making it easier for us to run around the pits, and plus it would give me something to help teach Lori how to ride. And then I took the body off of my R3 and put it on my backup bike, and then put my race bodies on and went through the process of upgrades and things that were going to happen next on the bike to get them race prepped. I should note that I bought a decal machine in the off season and learned how to do decals. I've been a graphic artist for my whole life, so I knew computer art, and I just needed to learn the software to do the cutouts for the decals. So I did my custom decals for the bikes and spent at least a week on each bike making that happen. And before you ask, no, I don't make decals for others. I find it to be way too much work. I can do designs for somebody if they need it, but KP12 Graphics is my go-to guy for decals. It was a no-brainer that the bike I had the most fun on in 2018 was my R3, so I knew I was going to go after my race license on that bike. Racing gave me more reason than ever to make some big upgrades. I started by adding woodcraft clip-ons to the bikes to get them adjusted where I knew that they would be the most comfortable, and I could fit the best handguards on the brake side, which is required if you're going to go racing. Plus, the thing I like about woodcrafts is that if anything happens, a lot of guys already run them, and I can get parts from other people if I needed a backup part. They make their clip-ons on different height adjustments, and of course if you're racing you want to get them down in a racy position. But particularly on the R3, they have two different styles that you can go with, and one of them is in more of a standard location that's OEM like, and then they have a race version that really pulls you more forward. It takes a whole lot more modifications, but Eric at Woodcraft said, hey, you really want to be doing this if you're going to go racing, and so that's the one that I went with. I needed to address something that would help the bikes get a little more power, oomph, or something, and if I was going to do that, the easiest and most cost-effective was to just get them breathing better, and that really was going to involve removing those cats with Y pipes. The Competition Works guys picked up my bikes and got the exhaust all set up. They already offered a Y pipe for the R6, but my R3 was the first one to have Y pipes, so they used that as their model to make them. And it was pretty cool having the bikes returned all ready to go. And it was also nice to see that the guys at Competition Works have featured my bikes on their site, and that they did a photo shoot with the R3, which was pretty cool. To compensate for the better breathing on the bikes, I went to M-Tech and had them put tuners on, and they did dynos on both of the bikes, just to make sure that everything was set up good and running as good as it could. And Mark DeGrasse was there, and he recorded them doing the dynos for me, so I posted those up. They turned out kind of cool. Next, I put the newest Bridgestones on both race bikes, R11s, which are DOT, but they recommend warmers when you're using them. Fortunately, Woodcraft had just come out with warmers for small bikes, so that was nice to be able to have those. I really like their warmers over others that I've seen. You don't have to risk accidentally leaving them on and kind of burning them out. But the idea of running a more aggressive tire and tire warmers was going to be a learning curve, and so I knew I needed to learn more about that, and so I really sought out a lot of help from the folks at the track and, of course, the vendors. We're at M-Tech in Bend, Oregon, and I'm with Mark DeGrasse and with Andrew Cox. The safety wire was a much bigger task than what I thought, and I was blessed to have friends Mark DeGrasse and Andrew Cox hang out with me for a whole day at M-Tech, drilling and swapping fluids, basically helping me finish the bikes. They both had said before I got there to get a whole bunch of bits, and that we'd be going through them. And one of the cool things, though, was spending the whole day with those guys that have been in the industry for years, and they each had great stories, just sharing and laughing. It was a fun day. I have to say it was a bit surreal to watch Andrew Cox install my Cox radiator guards. You know, seeing the guy that makes them, putting them on, that was kind of cool. I had some stuff to finish, like brake lines on the R6, so I ran over to the 2018 600 Novice Champion, which was Pierce Lutz, and he's only 20 minutes from my house, so I ran my bikes in there, and we worked on them for the day and in his garage, and got them dialed and ready to go. I planned to go to the Mac track the next day, knowing that the last time I was on the bike last year, I had my first little crash. I understood that it was totally my fault, attempting to go into the corner in a taller gear, and when I dipped into the turn and hit the gas, there just was no response, and the bike just went right to the ground, so I did a little low side. That was really the only thing that went wrong in 2018. So we loaded up, and that's when I found out that I was able to get all three of the bikes, plus the Grom in the front, and I was relieved that it all went well and seemed like it was going to work well. So I get to the track, and I'm out there riding all day, and really the best part of the day was, the photo shoot when I took pictures of the bikes for the beginning of the year. I wasn't riding anywhere close to where I was at the end of last season, so I was pretty bummed that I'd spent some time on the bikes and just was stinking up the place. A week after my first practice of the season, we were back out at the Mac track covering the 6-hour endurance race. We did that recap with Jason Duty, who also happened to be the main man on the winning team. There were some great battles that day, and that was one of the coolest races that I've ever seen. If you haven't been out to Mac to watch races, it's pretty cool because you can see the whole track from one location, and there's just great racing action right in front of your eyeballs. Just 1 week later, we got the news that Pierce had crashed at the Ridge, and it was pretty serious. A couple days after hearing about that crash, Jeff and Bill and I were out at the Mac track, and in between sessions we had some conversations that were both difficult but helpful. Later that week, I was headed to the Ridge for my first time ever, and it was going to be my first big track day of the year. And of course it was the track that Pierce had just crashed on, and I knew that, so that was getting in my head. On the way up there, we got the news that Pierce had passed away from some fluke complications as a side effect of the crash. I was met with my first major quandary since I started. I knew that the risk was there, and I'd been at the track on days when crashes had happened, and so I understood that. But this struck home a lot closer to me. I was really close to Pierce and spent time with him, more time than anybody else from the track, and we'd spent a lot of time in the off season making plans for 2019. And Pierce had just been racing at Pacific, and he had promoted to the expert class, and he won at Pacific, and I remember that was so cool to hear about that, and he was pumped and excited about the year. I went through a lot of emotions and thoughts about what I should do. In the end, there was something I just couldn't get past. Even though I had told myself before if I ever started and lost anyone close to me, I would just walk away. But I had just spent the funnest 2 summers of my entire life back to back. Those of us that have experienced this sport understand something we've heard many times, that we feel the most alive when we're on that track. So I got to Motovixens and spent my first 2 days on the big tracks of 2019 with them, and it was my first time riding with them. And I sat down with Carol Carpenter, who's the owner of Motovixens, and she gave us some insight.
We originally started it to target street riders, get them out on track and safely riding, but through time, because of the way we run our company, we have a lot of racers that come, knowing that we limit our rider sessions to 30 per session. So there's a lot of track time without a lot of traffic, and they get to actually put their head down and ride.
I'll never forget my first lap at the ridge and riding towards the corner that Pierce crashed on, knowing what had happened, and then I rode the rest of the session. I came in and told my wife, as much as I hated to admit it, I think this is my new favorite track. Only a few weeks later, I was back at the ridge with Moto Vixens and was in a full-day class with JP43 training that featured the expert analyst from Moto America and one of the most accomplished racing instructors and mentors in the nation, and that's Jason Pridmore. I hung out with him and his staff, which included Caroline Olson, who's a Moto Vixen sponsored rider in Moto America. I interviewed both of them after 2 days of getting to know each one of them better. Here's some snippets from those interviews.
I don't know everybody personally when they come into my class and they pay to be here. So the last thing I want to do is make anybody uncomfortable. And you can see between myself and my guys and instructors and stuff that we have a good time. That's what you got to do. I do a lot down in Southern California at CHUCKWALLA Valley Raceway, and yeah, our program it just fills. And I think that it's years of experience. It's also having done so many big schools and big events. It's taught me that it is true. The less people you have, the better the learning environment. So that's what we want to cater it to. Make it more personalized. Make it more one-on-one. Yesterday when I go on the track, I might follow 4 people, and I can come in and tell those 4 people right then and there, in a classroom setting, exactly what I saw, what we can work on as individuals, like I did with you. When I came up behind you, it was amazing. Your lines and everything were good. Your body position was good. There were little things that we needed to make tweaks on that I knew would make a big difference. And, I saw you, and then I had 3 more people after that. But I remembered what each one of those people did. And in the meantime, I've got 2 or 3 other of my staff doing that with others. And so what it does is that you get an immediate effect the second you go back out. And at some of the bigger schools, when you have 60 people, you're always worried about not getting to that person that doesn't really get their questions answered. And sometimes people can be a bit timid in classrooms and not want to talk or embarrassed to ask questions. But now I completely squashed that right off the bat. We try to keep it lighthearted and fun, as you saw. And then by the end of the day, I see the students talking to each other that weren't talking to each other when they got there. So it's just fun for us.
But yeah, no, we're happy to give people back some video, because sometimes, I've had conversations with students and writers, and they're like, no, I have it pinned, or no, I'm only 4th gear. And then I have the video there showing that, dude, we're only half-assing throttling it, and no, you're not in the gear you think you're at. So for a lot of people, and still I find a lot of help actually watching videos of myself, especially working on body position and stuff like that. You feel like you're off the seat, but maybe not as much as you would think.
When I got back, I compared my lap times and realized that I'd improved 10 seconds after being with JP43 compared to my first time there a few weeks before. I needed this confidence as I was heading to the main part of the next season, and that was going to be New Racer School. Yeah, I'm just trying to suck less. I have used that line probably 4 times since I've seen it.
so as good as that. That's it